circumcision in Genesis 17 is attached to the covenant between the pieces in Genesis 15. So this is where we begin our look into circumcision, because it's very important that we understand what Shaul is talking about when we look at Brit Milah, circumcision. Because Yahweh made the covenant, he swore that oath to Abraham in Genesis 12 by no one higher than himself. Yet Abraham came back and he requested some kind of guarantee. How do I know that I will really inherit this? Well, now I'm going to ask you to flay open the pieces. And in Genesis 15, he walks between the pieces. And then there's a sign attached to the walking between the pieces. 2 chapters later in Genesis 17, the cutting of the flesh is the sign that's connected back to Genesis 15. This is circumcision. But the answer to that promise that was given in Genesis 15, that answer, when did it come? 430 years later, when they were at Mount Sinai, the blood ratification of the book of the covenant was the answer given to the promise of Abraham 430 years later. So we have to understand that when they broke that covenant at the golden calf, they broke everything that was connected to it, which included the covenant entrance sign, which was the circumcision. This is the context of what we're talking about. Once that seal, which came 430 years later than Genesis 15, it came at Exodus 19. That seal, that answer to the promise, which was the book of the covenant, once that was broken, it broke the promise also, correct? And once you broke that promise, it also broke the covenant sign that was the entrance sign to it. So now you come to the fact that for 40 years after they left Egypt, no one was circumcised. They didn't circumcise their children. Why not? They wore tzitzits, which were a reminder of them to keep the commandment. Yet there is no instance in Scripture where Moshe Rabbeinu chastises Israel. Hey, you're wearing tzitzits, but you're not circumcised and you're keeping the Passover. Why isn't that recorded? There's no chastisement from Yahweh. Hey, you're wearing tzitzits, which are a reminder to keep the commandments, but you're not keeping the commandment of circumcision. 40 years, nothing. You got Levites wearing tzitzits, uncircumcised, sitting down at Passover. What's going on? There is no point circumcising into a broken covenant. What's the point? It's a mute issue until you get to Joshua chapter 5, verse 5. And then circumcision occurs, but it is not connected back to Genesis 15. It's a totally different point of what circumcision is. Circumcision in Joshua chapter 5, verse 5 is a land entrance token. Joshua 5, verse 5. Now all the people that came out were circumcised, but all the people that were born in the wilderness by the way as they came forth out of Egypt. This is from Exodus 32 till Joshua chapter 5, verse 5. Them they had not circumcised. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness till all the people that were the men of war which came out of Egypt were consumed. And this is the most important thing. Think about it. Before the golden calf breach and that covenant break of Exodus 32, prior to the 40-year wilderness lapse of Joshua 5, verse 5, physical circumcision, what was it? It used to be the premier entrance sign into the covenant. You weren't in the covenant without it, were you? You weren't in the covenant unless you were circumcised. It was the premier entrance sign to the covenant of Genesis 15. That was the entrance sign to the covenant. But once you've broken the covenant, what's the point of having the sign of entrance into a broken covenant? It's a moot point, right? Your wedding ring is only as good as your marriage vows and your fidelity. But once you're an infidel and you break your marriage vows and you go to the judge who gives you additional laws, well, you can see the kids every other weekend. What's the point of your wedding ring? It means nothing. It's a moot point. You may as well take it down the pawn shop because you broke everything that the sign stands for. There's no point in wearing one because you're a whoremonger, a hypocrite, right? That's circumcision. Circumcision is only as good as the covenant that you were faithful to. Once you broke the covenant at the golden calf, your circumcision is uncircumcision. Therefore, you can wear seats, come to Passover, and you get no wrath from Moshe Rabbeinu or Yahweh because there's no point circumcising into a broken covenant. So now circumcision today has got nothing to do with the covenant of Abraham. It is a land entrance token. And that is what Judaism and Christianity cannot discern, and thereby the Messianic movement cannot discern. They still believe that circumcision is connected back to Abraham. That covenant's broken at the golden calf. Circumcision today, as verified by Ezekiel when he took his 13 scrolls to the nations, is a land entrance token. You're going to come back to the land? Then you know what? You've got to be circumcised of heart and circumcised of flesh. Ezekiel communicated that to the nations. It's always been a land entrance token since Joshua 5:5, because the covenant was broken. This is the whole context of Shaul communicating to the Galatians. And it seems for 2,000 years or more, 3,500 years, people have not understood this. But Shaul understands it and he communicates it to the Galatians. And now we are the recipients of this revelation. It's huge. It's huge. Yahweh's Genesis 12 oath didn't require any human responsibility at all, did it? None whatsoever, including circumcision.